Welcome, everybody. My name is Pyro J. I'm joined here with Chixa and the Danger Taco. We are here to talk about the upcoming 2023 ESPORTSU Invitational, presented by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Talking about click it or ticket. Chixa, Danger Taco, we are looking forward to this matchup, especially because we're going to see some of these teams from the Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup down in Arlington, Texas that you two were just at. Seeing some of these teams face off in Rocket League is some incredible action to watch. Chixa, I'll start with you. I mean, what can we make out of these Rocket League teams that we're so excited to see here in this competition we're talking about with the Invitational?
Yeah, we have 8 different teams from the East, the South, the West, the Midwest, 2 apiece, kind of representing their geographical location around the United States. We have Northwood University, University of Akron, Fisher College, Stockton University, Indian River State College, University of Texas Arlington, Boise State University, as well as University of Oregon. Teams that we've often seen around the collegiate sphere, some new, some old, but nonetheless tons of talent packed in this one.
Yeah. And Taco, they all competed. A lot of them competed at that CECC that you were just casting for. Any of those teams in particular that hit your eye that you're really looking forward to watch?
I mean, it's just interesting to see some teams you just mix and match any of their rosters, and they just play great regardless. It doesn't actually matter who they put on the field. I'm thinking at the Northwoods, all the Akrons, they made the grand finals of that Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup, but that also being able to see the teams like Boise kind of struggle in some competitions and then really excel in others. They really did step up, play their A game. So I think sometimes when you play in person, it really just brings that extra, I would say, bit of performance out of you that you really just do like to play under the bright lights, under all the crowd noise. And I think because of that, some players really elevate. And I think really that's the peak of competition. If you can be in your flow state while a bunch of people are watching you in person, online, all that stuff throughout all the streams that people can tune into to watch these events, I think it's a great feeling to have. And I think it's something that a lot of these top tier programs love to cultivate in their players. And it was on full display down in Texas.
Honestly, I love that you mentioned Boise State in particular for just enjoying seeing these teams on a LAN format. I remember in November casting the West Regional for CECC, the qualifiers there, and it was at that Boise State Esports Arena. They like to give the best accommodations to their esports athletes over there. And Durtho, in particular, one of the players from that roster that I'm so excited to watch, they call him the Lanimal there. There's all these posters up in the arena of him just going nuts on the stage, enjoying competing for that team. That's the kind of excitement that we enjoy talking about, discussing, bring up storylines, because some of the players on these teams are just so special. But we'll get to Boise State later. I think it's important that I'm glad Chicks introduced the list of the teams, because we're going to run down each of those teams, folks, and talk about exactly our thoughts on each of these squads, what they bring to the table, and what kind of action we can prepare to see for the Invitational 2023 ESPORTSU. So Taco, I'm going to bring it back to you. We're starting out with Northwood University, a powerhouse in their own right. Could you speak to some of the things we can expect from the teams, the players from this university?
I think in esports and as well traditional sports, especially in the commentary side, using team terms like powerhouse is kind of overused because it's like, well, yeah, they're a good team. Northwood is really the bar, I would say, to judge most other esports against in the collegiate sense. They're one of the first programs in the nation that really went all in, talked to their administration, say, hey, if you want to compete at the top of collegiate esports, which is this kind of burgeoning aspect of esports, it's kind of under the radar, but it's gaining a lot of traction, gaining a lot of funding, you should be able to invest in these players. If you want a top tier program, you got to treat it like football. You got to treat it like basketball. You got to give me money for scholarships. You got to give me facilities. You got to give these player accommodations. You have to be able to get them in good dorms with good internet. You have to get them travel to lands and all these different things that make a great program in a traditional, at least, sports sense, into the realm of esports. And I think Northwood was, I'm not necessarily the pioneer in that, but they were the first university that I can think of that across multiple esports titles, and particularly in Rocket League, was able to secure a top tier roster of pretty much entirely professional players who play in Rocket League Championship Series, the pro level league, and also allow them to play in parallel with that for Northwood University. And so I think due to that, they've been one of the most dominant rosters, not just because they buy talent, but because they cultivate it. They have a great program. Everyone loves the coordinator. I feel like the mentality there is so strong. And so therefore, when they do come into a match, they are the favorites, but for reasons just beyond the fact that they import talent or whatever. It's because the players really buy into the system. They're coached well. Their mentality strong, and I think it's just incredible to watch them tournament after tournament. It's certainly not a fun time to be a team looking at a bracket and seeing a Northwood it potentially in your path.
I mean, you talked about one team, but why don't we talk about two? Northwood actually right now in Collegiate Rocket League hosts an A and a B team that are both almost equally as powerful. You're talking about players that can kind of mix and mash out depending on their schedule, their availability. Are they competing at the professional level at times? And does someone else need a sub in? But yet that doesn't seem to phase them when it comes to the LAN environment, when it comes to playing on the field with one another. They just continue to dominate time and time again. And it just shows that, people want to come there. Even if they're not on that official A roster, the B roster will fight just as hard, just as well to get to that spot, to even try to be as good as the quote unquote benchmark players that have been there since the 2020 fall season, that have continued to dominate the collegiate Rocket League scene. They have won fall, they have won spring, they have won world titles over again and again in the collegiate scene. And that just means the next players running up, the newer, younger freshmen and sophomores, are waiting to take the place of those before them and are still yet competing at that high level, placing just underneath that A roster.
Man, I'm so glad, Chixie, you mentioned that these players have been kind of around for a few years, because it's like, oh, 2020, that's like, what, 3 years? Okay, no, that's veteran status, okay? Collegiate Rocket League. That is something to admire. And Taco even mentioned about cultivating this talent. There's a reason these players stick together on these teams and under these esports organizations, because they're treated well, and this is a home worth staying in. Northwood have plenty of players to bring to the table. I mean, on the roster, we've got Lion Blaze, Nitrous, Hockey Buddy, and Noxes. Honestly, you put any of those, 3 of those 5 together, and you get a incredible team. Lion Blaze especially, who plays at the professional level. I mean, I'll throw this to either of you two. We have people that are performing at the professional level that are on these college teams. I mean, what's it like considering that some of these players are having to compete on both stages?
Imagine lots of practice. You have to balance the likes of the college atmosphere, which is homework, classes, time, practicing with your team, which I think at this point, sometimes Northwood Blue, the A roster, doesn't get as much time to spend as a team, but they've been together for so long, they don't need that time anymore. And then finding the time to practice with your professional team. So it's just a balancing act. We always say you need to spread yourself well where you can manage your time effectively, just like when you learn all the way through the likes of high school into college, and then figuring out, what's the best for me personally. Some people can multitask. Some people eat, breathe, sleep Rocket League at this point, and others need to take kind of those mental breaks. It's important, especially as a college student, to understand your limits. And I think, again, veteran status players, they've been around the scene since at least 2020 on that Northwood Blue A roster. They understand what are their limits, how do they want to push on forward, and what it looks like after college. Since it is, if they've been here for 3 years, college is normally 4 or 5 maximum. They're about at the end of their collegiate lifespan, I guess you could say, and they need to look forward into what is going to propel them into their own future.
Incredible to watch, honestly, and to consider. Yeah, understanding your limits, but also that Northwood team just feels limitless in the potential that they provide and what they'll be able to bring to this invitational. But there's plenty of other teams, plenty of other players. We talk a lot about Northwood because, folks, there's just so much to talk about with those 2 teams, especially that they introduce. But there's more teams at the front foot here. University of Akron, Taco, is another team that I feel like is waiting to be talked about. We got Tristan, Buzz, and Bullseye as the 3 representing this team. What comes to mind when you consider what University of Akron brings to the table?
I mean, Akron, for all of the bells and whistles that we talk about with Northwood, with some of the other colleges that we'll touch on a little bit later, is that recruiting is so important. Being able to get good players at your university is crucial. And Akron has had, I would say, fantastic success considering the fact that they can't offer as much as those top tier programs, but they still have a good esports facility, a really strong community bond with all their players, and they're able to secure also 2 teams within the top level of Collegiate Rocket League and just be able to continue bring in fresh new talent. And I would say if Northwood is the new era of Collegiate Rocket League, they are the bar to be judged again. Akron was back in the day the team to beat. They had won national championship after national championship. They were always a top contender. It was Tristan, it was Buzz, and it was Reticence for the longest time was the dominant 3 Presence has since moved on, but to fill their place, they have a Patty, they have a Foul, they've had a Hunter, they have just like a million different things that they can bring into the roster. And right now with Bullseye, they're kind of the newest player they've tried and swapped out and put in with these two titans of the collegiate scene in Buzz and Tristan. So much storied history between them, so much chemistry, and Bullseye just fits like a glove. So he's been a great new addition, and I just can't wait to see where this program goes as they continue to build chemistry and get even better tournament to tournament.
Yeah, you know what? For Akron, I'm even looking at how they competed most recently in Arlington, Texas, for the Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup, and they were running amok in that playoff bracket. A sweep against Bruton Parker, a sweep against Boise State. So maybe that's a rivalry that could be a brewing here in this invitational, but then falling to Northwood Blue. So that kind of old versus new story keeps shaping up between these two. Chicksa, I mean, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but like this Akron versus Boise or this Akron versus Northwood Blue happens again in this invitational. And how do you think Akron's going to position themselves for those matchups?
I will say Patty was playing instead of Buzz in that championship game, but they were indeed undefeated in their group stages as well. Akron came in as the 3 seed, did a phenomenal job all the way up to Northwood, but I know Taco and I both pointed out while there at CECC, Akron just looked kind of defeated from stepping onto the stage. I think mentally they were struggling with the giants that we have talked about. It felt like David v. Goliath, and I had a lot of faith in Akron moving forward, but ultimately they need faith in themselves to kind of move forward and beat the likes of Northwood when it comes to that brawl again and again. They have the potential. They've certainly have the experience. We talked about winning championships for them between like 2018 and 2020 in the Collegiate Rocket League sphere. So they have potential to keep moving on forward and doing just that. I think they, again, just need some more confidence in themselves, since that's the only way to beat Northwood. You have to come out guns blazing, just get creative, do your best, because you know no matter what, it's going to be a tough battle on the other end of that field.
Ah, is it ever? And you know what? Maybe it's the same for some of these other teams when they're facing Akron, because that is definitely going to be a tough competitor in this invitational. Cannot wait to see what Bullseye, Tristan, and Buzz are going to be bringing to the table for this group stage and then bracket if they continue to go. Continuing to go, though, with these teams is a college that I think has a lot to show for, depending, of course, who they bring to the table. But we're going to continue on to Fisher College. This is a team who brought 3 players of the names Kevin Tasek and Random Shy to that Arlington, Texas tournament, but they've also got professional players on their roster: Money, Kinsey, and Sosa, who are competing this weekend at the time of this recording for RLCS qualifiers. So you know that Fisher College, whoever they kind of bring to the table here, it's going to be another tough fight. Taco, I know you casted that Kevin Tasek Random Shy lineup just recently. Any major takeaways from that part of the team or Fisher College from a whole?
I would say with that specific team, it definitely was a struggle. I think these are subs, mostly just trying to play on a B side, being able to get in some games with each other, but not necessarily having, I think, the full chemistry that they want. And on top of the fact that I think they played fairly well, all things considered. They played against Bruton Parker College, a team in Georgia that does recruit, does do a good job of getting a good amount of talent in their program. And so getting a 3-0 from them is a little rough. I'm sure a lot of people looked at that bracket and saw Fisher, a team that does have a lot of talent on the roster, and getting 3-0. They're kind of confused, but they do have a little bit of an excuse. With those pro players, however, I think Fisher was really trying to make a splash because they have arguably the best Smash program in the nation, just based on being able to bring in all these great things for Super Smash Bros. But for Rocket League, they just kind of recently added these 3 pro players in Money, Kinsey, and Sosa. I think they expected to make a massive run through, and then they learned that you really can't just do one thing. You can't just bring a roster together and say, okay, now go win, get all your trophies, because they really did struggle. They still finished a pretty high rank in the league, but They did not win the Eastern Championship. They did not win the National Championship. And then in the second semester, they're still looking for an actual championship here. Whereas in other esports, it feels like they really do dominate. So that must be a weird feeling for them. There is still, at the time of this recording, a few bits of weeks in between now and a world championship for Collegiate Rocket League, in which they will be participating with that full roster. So even if this showcase is going to be showcasing pro players, or maybe it's going to be a mixture of them in the B team, or maybe just the B team, Fisher is trying to make a stamp within the collegiate scene. I think they've done it very well so far, but I think right now we're all just comparing it to the metric of Northwood, and Fisher is saying we are just as good, if not better than that. You just got to give us time.
Breaking out of that Northwood shadow is definitely something Fisher College continue to fight for, and it's a fight worth watching. So I can't wait to see what they bring at the Invitational. Chicksa, we just got done talking from Danger Taco about the CRL Worlds that have happened. With this next team of Stockton University that I'm really excited to talk about, we have some players that have that experience from Collegiate Rocket League Worlds with this lineup of Bussy, Anthony Pizza, and Top Cheese. So what does that kind of experience, as we get geared into talking about Stockton University, kind of bring to the table with a tournament like this?
Yeah, Bussy and Top Cheese going all the way in CRL Worlds last year to the finals, ended up going second place to Northwood Blue, but nonetheless, Top Cheese at that season, at that point, was named pretty much the MVP of CRL in general at that time. Before, of course, the Worlds event happened, and we had to name an MVP from the winning side of the field, but he looked phenomenal. Same with Bussy. Both of them had made great strides and bounds in the collegiate sphere, working on themselves, and proving Stockton to really be a program that should be looked at and should be dealt with at times on the field. They were a phenomenal roster last year, but they did lose one of their players, and now Anthony Pizza is not trying to prove himself. He's the new third man in the group. We enjoy watching him on the field, but it still hasn't meshed the same way. They have since struggled with this new roster with Anthony Pizza, and it's unfortunate to see a team that was so high in that grand finals and now just falling short pretty often. They have a lot of thinking to do. I don't think this year went the way that they would like, but I think they still have time to improve moving on forward and just keep getting better and better, because Collegiate Rocket League just never stops.
It never seems to stop. It really doesn't. And falling short with this, new roster, it surprises me, because Anthony Pizza, he's so tall. I mean, how do you fall short? Come on now. Listen, I like the potential that Stockton University have with this roster, especially with Bussy and Top Cheese. And seeing them compete at this Invitational is going to be very, very exciting. Danger Taco, we're talking about roster fills. We're talking about kind of loss of players and new players inserting. I feel like that's a very namely topic for this next college I want to introduce, Indian River State College, or ISRC. This tournament, they are not going to have Seabass on this roster. What are your thoughts looking at how this roster is going to be filled with Disruptor, matching up with Taco Stash and Slayer?
I think it's an interesting adjustment, primarily because Seabass is a former pro player. He's an incredibly talented player who has been really just snagged by IRC. And Slayer, I would say, is kind of the coordinator of it all. Like in terms of official actual capacity, he is not. I would say Disruptor has been a little bit of a manager, a little bit of a sub on the back end, but Slayer has been someone who has really historically been the player who says, okay, I'm going to try to build you guys a roster, IRC. I'm going to bring out all these different talents. And I think they're in that process of trying to try out new people in the moment. Disruptor is coming in, and he's a little bit of a question mark. I would say almost every single competition IRC has ever played in, I don't think they've ever really subbed out. So this is going to be a big moment, because this is, as we said, a showcase against the best of the best. Like, if you really got together some of the most storied programs, some of the most respected programs, I would say all these teams in this are going to be on it within the current sphere of collegiate esports, particularly with Rocket League. So I would say IRC having that roster change up, this is kind of their intermediate phase. I don't know if Disruptor going forward is their pick, but it is certainly going to be a player that has earned their spot on that roster. He works a lot on the back end, and now it's saying, oh, now I have to show these kids what's what as I take to the field and really play against some of these top tier competitions. So certainly going to be a test for the at least tried and true duo of Slayer and Taco Stash to see how they combine.
Nice. I just love that. I especially love that some of these players are bringing even more to the table than just them as competitors. I know Slayer coaches some teams at the professional level as well. So you not only have these players that, you know, that Slayer Taco Stash duo that we're going to look out for, but you got to key into how they maneuver around the field. What kind of mid-series adjustments are they going to make, according to some teams, as they begin to realize more and more what the competition is before them? That to me is one of the most exciting things about watching Rocket League, is watching those decisions that some of these players are able to make and looking at them converting those changes for success. Listen, we talk about changes of these rosters in these different colleges. This next university, UT Arlington, they're about to have a big change. This is actually going to be their last ride of their roster. Either of you guys that want to speak to UTA and the excitement that brings with this roster getting kind of one last hurrah at this invitational.
Yeah, UT Arlington, one of the most consistent teams in the West for quite some time. Samba, Nava, Adverse. Samba, the Collegiate Esports Commissioner Cup was apparently kind of his last ride. You know, we have Sin there as a potential to maybe take his place if he decides to step down officially. But one thing we know about Samba is he likes to fight. He kind of likes to have fun. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being in this roster nonetheless. We thought it was their last try. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But they have done really well in the past. And Samba in particular is a special player when it comes to playing on the field. He is the playmaker. He's the captain. And although he jokes around a lot, I think he has a lot of passion for his team nonetheless. Nava and Adverse have always been phenomenal teammates for him, at times popping off while Samba maybe can't pop off, or facilitating and following up on Samba's play on the field. It's kind of a chemistry that we always enjoyed to watch on the field when it came to their gameplay. They just continue to do well, and I think when Samba does officially leave, that's big shoes to fill for University of Texas Arlington, because they have done so well in the recent years of Collegiate Rocket League.
Yeah, no doubt about that. University of Texas Arlington, I mean, listen, they have a lot to bring to the table, and I'm just excited to see what they bring to this invitational with this like hoorah effort. I love the way you put that, Chixa, so thank you. We got two other teams from the West End that we still have to talk about, though. A lot to talk about these other teams, but next I want to take it to Boise University. I know I had a lot to talk about with this roster, but Chixa, I'm actually going to throw it back to you, because we were talking about this team earlier as well, and while I talked so much about Durtho and Instinct, I've just seen make incredible plays on the field, such dynamic players. Your eyes were on another player on this roster. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, Gil, for sure. I think he's honestly underlooked when it comes down to being a player on the field that is just so defensively motivated. He's a defensive machine, and, Durtho and Instinct often take all that jazz from him because they score more often, but do not underestimate him. He is important, and he makes plays when they desperately need plays, when they're kind of coming up short. And then when it comes down to playing defensively, again, that brick wall, or being that midfield man to fit it all together. So he may not ever have the most shots or the most goals or the most scores, but at the end of the day, he is the one that kind of lets their cylinders all click through and work out just fine.
Beautiful. And briefly, Taco, when we talk about Boise State University, we talk about another university that kind of establishes a really nice reputation in terms of the esports scene. Could you bring people a little more insight as to what Boise State the kind of investment they put into the scene to give you that reputation?
Well, I think the one thing about Boise that I think other universities really need to emulate is that they do tried to pour it in with saying, okay, not only are we going to do the aspect of, getting these players in, giving them some scholarships, giving them some like support on the back end, but they have not only like an esports facility, which isn't just, putting computers in an office building in the corner of some old admin building. No, they have a whole esports arena that they love to run events out of, that they love to have players play up on a stage. They have players or rather students that can come in and watch. And so it kind of trains them for that LAN environment, which seems kind of extra. Some people might say, wow, that's so over the top. Why would you need that? But no, I think it really does help the players. It helps be able to legitimize what they're doing a bit more, and also caters to the broader student population. But as of the impact of what that does for the players, I think you can tell whenever they talk about their university, they're really prideful. They're taking it seriously. Their coach is actually one of the most visible Rocket League content creators in Wheaton. And I would say he's a local. He went to Boise State previously. And usually when you may have those appointments, I know other collegiate Rocket League teams have appointed content creators as their coaches. And it's more of just kind of a look at this person on our player sheet. But Wheaton was at CECC Texas, that Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup, and he was taking it incredibly seriously. He's in the comms, he's in the communications with players, kind of instructing them, keeping them calm, and they had a great finish in that event. And I think in part it's because everyone at Boise understands that if you want to compete with the Northwoods, with the Fishers, with the Akrons of the East, in the West, you have to create your own program in those kind of blueprints. And I think they've done a spectacular job so far, and they're only going to continue to grow.
I appreciate the insight on these West teams, Taco. I'm gonna throw it right back to you. Let's wrap it up with University of Oregon, our last of the 8 teams that is gonna be at this invitational competing. And this roster especially, I'm curious to hear from you. Who you think some of the standout characters on this team is? We have Imminent, Siebes, and Arrow. What do you look forward to in terms of seeing University of Oregon compete?
I would say Oregon is probably, when you look at all these rosters, saying, well, that's the most major university in terms of something that you might know nationally for all these other different sports. But on the esports side, they're a bit more green. They had a very good roster back in the day within Collegiate Rocket League CRL, the main league supported by the developer. But then all those people left. They all graduated. So now this is their new iteration, and it's Imminent, it's Siebes, and Arrow trying to make a name for themselves. They qualified in 2 CRL 2 seasons in a row, but then they looked okay at times. This season, they were able to get top 8, which in its own right means that you're top 8 in the entire nation, hypothetically, for division in the West. But then beyond that, they beat the team that was in second place in all of the West for that. Then they went into finish top 4. They were one game away, one series away from making it into a national championship, potentially then having a bid for the world championship. So they played incredibly well. They have upset potential. They've beaten Boise. They've beaten a lot of these teams in other different leagues around Collegiate Rocket League, since there's many, many, many leagues that you can play in. So I would say, for most people looking at these rosters and saying, well, we've talked so much about these other teams, how can Oregon stand up? They've shown that they can. Just on any given day, Collegiate Rocket League has gotten so competitive at the top end that any team can beat any other team. And that's why it is my favorite collegiate esport to watch by a mile.
And that's why we're putting together this 2023 ESPORTSU Invitational, is because it is that exciting. These are some of the top collegiate Rocket League teams that we're going to see be able to compete against each other. I would throw in any excuse just to be able to watch, let alone cover these teams and this type of action. So, I mean, folks, we've talked about the teams that are going to be underway in this invitational. And it's really interesting because we know some of the first round matchups that are going to occur as well. To briefly discuss the format, it's going to be a group double elimination. So you've got some groups that only 2 teams are going to make it out of. We're actually going to be matching up the East and the South teams against each other. So that's Fisher, Stockton, Indian River, and UT Arlington versus... And then another group with the West versus the Midwest together. So that would be the Boise State and Oregon University, or University of Oregon, and Northwood and Akron. Now, Chicks and Taco, that presents us with some very spicy round 1 matches, I have to say. We know the matches, but I'm gonna throw to you guys to talk about which match you're kind of most excited about. Maybe we start there. So, Chicksa, out of these 4 first round matchups, why don't you introduce the first one and maybe why you're so excited about it?
Yeah, so I guess in the top of the East and South are all like top. One of the matchups is going to be Fisher and Indian River State College. I think it's going to be interesting to watch both of these, being that Fisher is potentially again playing with that second roster. So it might be Kevin Tasek and Random Shy, and if so, they have essentially a second chance to kind of play with the big dogs again. They were very nervous at the Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup. You could tell even in just the interview I did with them, they weren't sure. It was a new environment, a new day, a new opportunity. Now here they have a chance against Indian River State College, who was also there and had a pretty decent run, but now they're lacking Seabass, like we mentioned, on that roster. So it's going to be a trial potentially of, again, a new roster and a roster that's looking to prove themselves in that first East versus South matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned like Fisher being this timid team that did approach with a player like Random Shy. Like it's in his name. But in fairness, I've actually met Random Shy before, and although he is a little bit shy, he's actually very committed as well to being a very good Rocket League player. So, you know, whatever you see on the face value, you know beneath these collegiate Rocket League players and these competitors, there exists the heart, the desire to be at the top of this competition, and we'll truly see that on the field, especially in that matchup against Fisher College and IRSC. So one that I'm looking forward to as well. Taco, we got more first round matches as well, so what catches your eye?
I think the Akron and Boise matchup between the West and Midwest is really nice for me, because in CEC Texas just recently, that LAN, Akron was on a tear. In fact, up to the grand finals, they did not drop a single game. And I mean that as in individual games. You play best of fives all day. They did not lose a single game in any of those series leading up to it. They were on a tear. Only Northwood could really damage them and pierce that armor. Whereas Boise, I was watching them play. I was over their shoulder. I had my camera. I was trying to take some candid photos, just having fun. But every once in a while, I just had to watch, and they were on another one. They seemed locked in. They seemed confident. And if they didn't run into a red hot Akron, who knows how far they could go. I know Boise has a lot of promising recruits coming in next time, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is a final hurrah like we have seen with other lineups in terms of seeing this roster around for the last time, but it's certainly a team that has gotten better and better and better, and I think they finished better every single competition they've gone into. So this is a little bit of a revenge tour, because I think Boise, the way that they were playing, the way that they won that land that you covered out in Boise, Pyro, a little bit earlier in the year, that they certainly think that they can be a championship team. They just need that opportunity. So being able to take out the team that was able to knock them out, I think that's going to be a huge confidence booster, and especially just like a nice satisfaction to receive, especially from a showcase like this.
Yeah, that matchup gears up to be so interesting with that potential satisfaction on the table. This kind of revenge tour, as you're putting it, because I agree. Like covering that qualifier event at the Boise State Arena, Esports Arena, yeah, you can tell this team is made up of champions, and they want to exude that definitely in this matchup against Akron. You know, we hit on the Boise match against Akron, but there's another West team of Oregon, Chicksa, that's going to be facing up against Northwood. Definitely a tough draw for any team that's going to have to go up against Northwood. What do you make of the matchup, and maybe what this Oregon squad is going to have to do to come out and with some fire in this first round matchup?
Yeah, I think no matter what, like I said earlier, if you're going up against Northwood, you need to go at them with confidence. You need to play your best and understand, you know, these are the top dogs of the Collegiate Rocket League scene. We just need to do our best, play our best. They're consistent. They're new. They're at least getting in that top CRL, of course, rankings from here time to time. And I think they're looking ahead against Boise State if they get that rematch and both of them move on forward in that West/Midwest matchup. I'm excited to see how they'll do against the likes of Northwood, a Northwood roster that we don't know exactly what they'll be coming on forward, but we know no matter what, again, the 6 players that accompany both Northwood Blue and White can all pack a punch. So they need to prepare for every player, every possibility. And Imminent, who we have mentioned is the featured player on that University of Oregon roster, is going to need to step up and kind of be almost quote unquote the Lion Blaze of that roster, since Lion Blaze is always the eye that we catch if he is playing on Northwood at that time, as someone who is mechanically gifted on the field and just always is a dynamic facilitator for offense. You need to fight with fire at times, and you also need to be able to defend the shots that you know will be oncoming. It's an onslaught when you're against Northwood, so you better be prepared.
Yeah. Listen, I'm excited to see Imminent and what he can do with that roster, as well as the whole teammates of University of Oregon. And it's funny the way you put it too, Chicksa. It's like, well, we don't know which, composition of Northwood University we'll see, but yeah, it's gonna be tough either way. That's just what you have to understand playing against Northwood University. So a lot to look forward to, especially in terms of who we'll see on the field. But speaking lastly about who we're going to see on the field in this first round is that final first round matchup, Danger Taco, of Stockton University and UT Arlington. This is another one of those matchups where, we're trying to tease out who's going to make it to those winners matches, and as well moving on to this Invitational. And do you have sort of an inkling as to who you could see moving on from this first round matchup at least?
Oof. I mean, it's tough. There's a lot of coin flip decisions sometimes. The one thing that is very frustrating is, Chicksa and yourself know, you being an analyst in Rocket League, there's a lot of times where you're coming in and you're pretty confident. You're like, I'm going with this side. And then suddenly everything flips around. It's not even that the team is playing poorly. It's just they don't clash well. They just clash with play styles. And so it is a little tough here, I would say, when it comes to particularly like Stockton and UT Arlington within this matchup and trying to determine who goes forward. These two teams are very similar in terms of narrative, I would say. They have two players that I would think at the forefront like to talk, they're super fun to interview because they always tell you exactly what they think in terms of Samba on UT Arlington and Bussy on Stockton. They do not shy away from the tough questions, being honest about their performances and their team's performances. But then beyond that, it's also a last hurrah for Samba and also for Bussy moving on from college. So they've done really well. UTA was so incredibly close to getting to the World Championship. Stockton didn't even qualify into a CRL World Championship. They had to go all the way through a lower last chance qualifier, rather 64 teams, single elim bracket, pretty much all best of 7. And they just barely squeaked it out. One of the 2 slots out of the 132nd of all the teams that could make it in. So they have proven that they're still at that elite level. But I think UTA is definitely, a couple of things fell a little bit different, they'd be right next to them. So I would say this is a fantastic matchup. I give the edge for Stockton right now, just based on recent form. But UTA, we know that when they are at their peak, they're a horrifying team. They were really setting the pace in the West for a while on how to play fast-paced, aggressive offense.
I mean, Taga, you're gearing up this match to be a match that we have to watch and we need to witness, because that's the one that, to me, goes the distance out of any of these teams, to that last game, to those nail-biting final seconds to see who scores the last goal. And as well, Danger Taco, I know you said that it's sometimes very difficult, really hard on us analysts to actually make a prediction, to actually have to truly force the hand of one or the other. And I'm so happy to make us do that right now. Let's get those predictions out there. At the very least, I'll be happy to fall on the sword first. I'm going to put my prediction, and let's go with Stockton and UTA. Let's close the book on this one. I actually, even though you gave the age to Stockton, I'm going to go with UTA. I love this story of Samba Nava and Adverse going out with a bang. With this kind of last look with this roster, I feel like this is their time to give that echoing sound wave with a grand performance in this Invitational. I think they're geared together to do a lot well. It will be tough, but that's the way I'm gonna go. Okay, who wants to take the next prediction and make me sound and look stupid here?
Me.
Chicksa?
Me.
All you.
Okay, but this time I'm not going to make you look stupid because I agree with you. I think it's going to be University of Texas Arlington taking it as long as Samba is actually playing and it's not Sin. If he's on the field, Samba is that dynamic player. He is the facilitator. And no matter how rusty he says his team is, they said they didn't practice for a month going into the Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup. I still think they did really well. With that being said, I think as well they have their eyes set on the rematch with Indian River State College that we did get to see there. I think if both of them do make it through that upper bracket to play each other, they want a rematch for all of us that we want to see as well. So with that being said, I'm going to give it the advantage to Arlington. Again, if Samba is on the field, I'll give myself that out.
Yeah, that's fair, Chicks Taco. I mean, we heard the way you're leaning, but I gotta hear a solid prediction from your standpoint.
I would say I'm going for Stockton for this, mainly just because I think recently they've shown the form to be able to pop off and get all those wins. And in the CECC event, they did actually not get as far as they might want to. They lost in groups, but they also had an incredibly stacked group of very talented West teams, also a really jacked up East team. So I would say, yeah, they lost that, but also a lot of teams would not be able to pull through. I still think that when it comes to UTA and Stockton, they have very similar play styles. They have two players that at a time, and Top Cheese on Stockton and Adverse for UTA. Those are two teams that I would say a lot of people put in some of the top players in the entirety of their conferences. Adverse, I would say for a while was my pick for the best player in all of West. Now there's a bit more stiff competition in that regard, but I will say they know how to lead the way. They're probably the quieter players in the background of the Bussy and the Sambas. So I would say Stockton, for me, I feel like they have that experience. Bussy also just refuses to lose when it really matters. It feels like he always finds a way to kind of pull something out, make games a lot closer, even if the kind of run of play is not favoring their squad. So I believe in the Stockton win here. How close it's going to be, I do think it could go the distance, and I might even just endorse it to go the distance because that's just more entertainment for all of us.
It truly is. Yeah. Well, now if it's a sweep, I don't know what we're going to say because we have chalked this match to be one of the best and then watch it be, one team pouncing on the other. But hey, we'll just have time to tell there as it is a first round matchup. But let's get these predictions locked in, analysts, because I think the people need to hear where we side. Let's work our way back, right? Right before Stockton UTA, we discussed Northwood and Oregon. That matchup may be the one where we all side together. I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'm gonna go ahead and take the first prediction here again. Northwood, to me, seemed like a very difficult team to beat. And I will preface that by saying, University of Oregon is a team I've been able to see, even in the land setting from that West Regional qualifier. That's a team that I spoke to other players that people are afraid of. Like, they know what they bring to the table. So they kind of have that underdog special against Northwood that I think they could surprise people with, but it's hard just not to favor Northwood.
Yeah,
I'd have to agree. It's pretty synonymous. Northwood, powerhouse, top dog, David v. Goliath moment. Northwood pulls out whatever three players you want. Heck, they pull up their entire Northwood White B roster. They're still gonna smash it out of the park. I'm sorry, Oregon. You know what? Ducks are cool and everything, but Northwood's gonna completely smash it. It's Northwood. It's always Northwood. I cannot not have faith in them.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to root against Northwood, particularly because of how consistent they are. It's one of the few teams I think I've casted at any level, professional or collegiate, where I don't think I've ever seen them have a truly bad series. Like, if they lose a series, it's because the other team was playing out of their minds. They are really just when they talk about the floors of teams, like how bad they can possibly play versus their ceiling, how great they can possibly play, it's incredibly close to each other because it's always at the very top. So when you see them lose, it has to take a Herculean performance. And I think Oregon are capable of that, as of all the teams in this invitational. I just don't see it happen this time, only because Oregon is probably the weakest on paper out of all these. It would have to take quite the upset potential for them to actually do that.
Yeah, you present a really interesting picture, which is what does the peaking Oregon look like against the floor of Northwood? And if I'm hearing you right, it's like Northwood might still have this because their floor is so high, because they really are mistake free. So we'll see what happens in that matchup. Chicksaw's laughing because you not only did go for Oregon, but you were like, you even went after the Ducks. You're like, yeah, Ducks are cool and all, but like I'm just imagining Chicksaw ordering a roasted duck tonight and enjoying her supper. Like
that's what Northwood's gonna do. All right.
The Wolves versus the Ducks. I mean, it's not a favorable matchup for one of those animals.
Oh, ruthless. Are we as ruthless with our future predictions? Let's keep working our way back. Talk about another West versus Midwest matchup. That's going to be Boise University versus Akron. Taco, I'm picking on you. You have the first reaction, the first prediction for this one.
I would say I'm going to go with Akron on this one. I think it'll still be closer than the last one, but I still think they edged out because Boise is a very good program. I love how they play. I love their coaching. I love their mentality. They don't get tilted. They stick in every series. And in Akron, still able to get that sweep at that Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup in Texas. And I think it's due to the part that they've been mixing and matching a lot. Every semester, they bring in a roster and they have 6 incredibly talented players. And then it's like, okay, how do we fit these all together in a way that works? In 2 semesters ago, they tried something, didn't really work. This past semester, they switched it up and then it almost locked in. They're like, wait, we figured it out. This is the way to go with it. And it's Tristan, it's Buzz, and it is Bullseye. It's 2 players with a lot of veteran experience, kind of teaching Bullseye the ropes of how to play at this level. And Bullseye just says, okay, I have all these mechanics, I have all this speed, I have all this confidence. Now I'm just going to implement it in the play style. I think Akron, when they're playing well, are actually one of the top East teams still after all these literal years for 2/3 of that roster to play for. I think with all that momentum behind them, Boise, even though they're on the come up, they haven't been able to really show me that they can beat the very, very top. I think they're right at the edge, almost like looking through at this glass ceiling that they're at. But if this is a chance to prove it, so be it. But for right now, I got to put my forebrain behind Akron.
Chicks, are you on the same page here as Taco? What are you thinking here?
I have to agree again. I honestly think Akron will take this one. They've shown really, really well in that Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup. They still do have the chops, like Taco was saying. They've done really well in the past. I'm excited to see Buzz instead of Patty this time on the field, really showing what they have as that 3 roster with Tristan and Bullseye. It's nice to watch them play before in kind of our Collegiate Esports Cup Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup. We saw, Akron as the 3 seed coming in, and I boldly predicted them to win everything, and I kept that pick on the desk against Northwood. I mean, I looked kind of like a fool, but I wanted to give them the chance because if they do have the day of all days, they can do really well, just like they have in the past as well. I think they expect, again, Northwood to beat Oregon in that other matchup in the West versus Midwest, and they want that, again, a rematch. These revenge matches, this kind of rivalry is what I like to see out of them. I think maybe not on that LAN environment, in their own zones, they will have the opportunity to play Northwood at the max. So they're going to be gunning for that Northwood matchup.
I mean, we're amping up these matchups that haven't even started to percolate yet. But you're right that Akron Northwood matchup could be spicy. The other thing you said, Chicks, was you said maybe you're foolish for going for Akron in that matchup. I don't think you were, because guess what? I'm going to be the one going for Boise State this time around. Okay, like I said, I got to see this team at their own esports arena. And while I do think that in the future they're going to be working this roster with Dirtho and with a couple others, I know what I saw, and I liked what I saw as well. The way Dirtho works with Instinct, yes, he has his hero plays, but the way they combine effortlessly on offense just is something majestic. And I think if they hone in that glory, and the same thing that Chicksa was talking about with the defensive prowess of Gil, they can stop Akron. I think they've got the chops for it. They need someone to back them. So here I am, Boise. Take them to town, see what they could do. One final matchup, analysts, for us to get our predictions locked in. Fisher College, IRSC, whichever one of you is feeling confident about your choice, go for it.
Can I give myself the out? Honestly, Fisher takes it if money can send Sosa play. If it's the B roster, IRSC wins. Like, can I be split? It's just so hard to tell because Fisher A and B roster is kind of night and day at times, and I hate to give them like the kind of out the unfortunate kind of circumstance, but you know what? Like the pro roster is really good. They're professionals for a reason. So if they do indeed show up, or even a culmination of both of them, I do think Fisher wins, even against an Indian River State College without the likes of Seabass. So it's hard for me to exactly predict. I know I'm giving myself another out. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, but it's so hard. I think at the end of the day, rosters are everything. How a team's feeling is everything, and day by day, how you're feeling at the time of the match being played is also everything. Yeah. Can I be done? Is that sufficient? Or are you gonna make me pick one?
Oh, not me. I think you kind of did, actually. That was like the smartest answer that anyone
nailed it. Let's go.
Literally provided was based on the team. So I have no qualms, Taco.
I mean, I think it's very much a conditional thing in that IRC has beaten Fisher before in different competitions. They look strong against them, but Fisher does have a lot of star power behind them. Granted, if Fisher can have that roster there, that's great, but we do also know that they might actually be busy with RLCS at that time. So if that is the case, then I do feel like I'm going to have to give it to IRSC because I believe that's how it's going to work out. They only have 2/3 of their starters, but Disruptor, even if they were just setting their controller down on their desk and not playing at all, Slayer and Taco Stash are a good enough duo that they could probably still play that one competitively. I believe IRC does take this one. Granted, it is contingent on that, but even with the full strength roster, I mean, it'd be interesting to see IRC go out with at least not taking a game or two. I have faith in them, particularly based on the potential roster that might be showing up.
I'm hearing a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, and I'm gonna walk along that tightrope of the conditional as well. So we'll just stamp a big old wild card, bam, on Fisher Indian River State College. Find out on the day. That's what we're gonna go with, I believe, as we have officially, off of that, our official predictions for these first round matchups, and getting excited because truly that's where the narratives start. You know, we can do all this prep work as analysts to say, okay, we know what these teams are bringing to the table, et cetera, et cetera. But the two of you mentioned, sometimes it's the players on the day. Sometimes it's how they're competing truly in the event and how different play styles clash with others. So that's part of the excitement that we get to witness with these events. As we're wrapping up this pre-show of the ESPORTSU 2023 Invitational, we gotta call out some big winners. Who do we think is going to win this whole tournament? I think is really difficult to call with 8 incredible teams, but we've got to pick one. I'll take a hand again if anybody really wants to try to choose just one of these teams to win the whole tournament. Doesn't have to be a hard locked prediction, but we might as well throw a team out there.
I'm gonna go with the safe bet and go with Northwood. You know, tried and true, the roster that constantly wins, has been winning the past 3 years. I think they got second one time in Collegiate Rocket League in the past 3 years. You know, results show. They say it. The A and B roster, both 14-1 this season in Collegiate Rocket League. I mean, they're good. I gotta go with Northwood. It's a predictable result at the end of the day if they do take everything.
All you, Taco. All you,
tough.
Please.
It's just so tough. It's just so tough because part of me is thinking, like, so, well, I really like how Akron's playing. I really think they've played well lately, and I think I would love to see that grand final replay, because Chicks did have a good point in that at the Collegiate Esports Commissioners Cup Championship, Akron did look defeated, but I think that's just because they got in their head. I think when you're playing against Northwood, the moment you drop a game or two, it almost feels like, well, here we go again. It's just, you can't do it. But they did play those games close. That being said, though, Northwood is the safe bet because they do win a lot, only because their recruiting is insane. The depth pool is just 50 feet deep, because you look at this roster and say, well, you know, Lion Blaze might not be there, and Buddy might not be there because his squad might have gotten in there. And then also, see, Hockey also might not be there. And then you're looking at it and you're just thinking to myself, well, not all those players are going to completely be out of there. And also, even if you replace them, you still have Noxus, you still have Nitrous, these two players that are at pro level or just slightly below. So it's really just a problem of all these other teams saying, oh, they have to put in their sub. For Northwood, you're saying, oh, no, they have a sub that is already at that level. They're just so good. In fact, they might even be too good to be able to be toppled in this one.
Fair predictions across the board here for Northwood. I cannot deny it. Just so we don't sweep the desk, I'm going to take an interesting wild card pick here, in that Fisher College do bring their main roster. In some way, somehow, these players, they're available and they're competing for the glory, and they take it against Northwood. I think they got the chops to do it. And if they come out swinging, they'll take it. So I'll throw in one for Fisher College here for this tournament. No doubt. However, well, okay, we'll see what happens. But for the ESPORTSU Invitational 2023, yeah, we don't know. This is why you have to find out. So let's discuss just that, how you can find out where and when. On ESPORTSU for Twitch, you'll see Saturday, May 20th. It all begins at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's where we'll show off the East group. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern, we'll follow with the West to start and kick off this 2023 ESPORTSU Invitational. So, Chicsa, Taco, thank you so much for discussing these teams, talking about the initial matchups, the lineups that come to the table, and as well just the universities, the programs of esports in which they bring. I think it's really interesting to talk about the context of what these universities do for these players, not only to give themselves a chance to compete at this level, but also to invest in them and provide them the resources and the scholarships to achieve. That's the great thing. All right, well, this was the 2023 ESPORTSU Invitational pre-show presented by NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and Click It or Ticket. Make sure y'all buckle up, be safe, and have a good night.